2 months ago, I was asked to write to 2 young boys who had just lost their mother. She died unexpectedly on Monday, February 12th, 2018, of all things, the flu. She was just 47. Part of the reason I was asked is that I firmly believe that everyone should write letters. A month before, in January, on a platform that I mainly use for business, I was moved to post to my Facebook with an open heart. I wrote, "Pick a living family member and start up a pen pal relationship with them tonight. No matter where on earth you are, or what on this earth you are doing or going through, or how estranged you are, or who the president is. Send out a stamped, handwritten letter, more than 2 paragraphs long, to them a few times a year. Put the ones you get in return in a little box. Take the little box along as you evolve through life and change apartments, homes, careers, relationships, states. I promise you will not regret it." I wrote it because I learned that day I was about to lose the single most constant relationship I had in my life, a pen pal relationship spanning more than 20 years. After the post, a few neat things happened. I got some letters in the mail, one from someone I went to college with, a couple from people from different chapters of life, and one opportunistic charmer even saw the post and said, "I'm going to write that woman a letter," and conned my mailing address out of a mutual friend. A few years ago, the Harvard Business Review reported that letter writing, according to the US Postal Service, is on drastic decline. The average household in 1987 only received a personal letter every 2 weeks. And then in 2010, it had plummeted to once every 7. Technology has taken our society forward by great leaps and bounds, but we're missing an element of tangibility within it, as evidenced to me by the emergence of these really great analog micro-countercultures, such as photographers returning to the darkroom to work with film again, and vinyl records and record players once again becoming on trend. And just this month, NPR did a story on a typewriter that was set up in a bookshop in Ann Arbor, Michigan 5 years ago that has since produced thousands of pages of anonymous notes, thoughts, jokes, letters, the best of which have recently been published in a book. This tells me that big tech is great, but the soul is craving something simpler, more tangible, and by all accounts, these days considered nostalgic, romantic, bygone, in the midst of an era of endless scrolling and algorithms. There's the drive to unplug so that we may, in fact, connect more deeply. You might ask yourself, what am I missing by not changing the form from email to letter writing? Well, first, things that are analog take time to sit and create. When you get a letter in the mail, it is like, wow, someone took the time to do this for me. That Harvard Business Review article said that handwritten letters indicate investment, and that costliness indicates value. If, as the US Postal Service notes, we only receive a letter every 2 months, it's likely that each of those letters means more to us than the cheaper forms of communication we receive each day. And second, artifact. When you receive a letter in the mail and someone opens it, it becomes an artifact, a thing of permanence, of personal history, and of art. Have you ever rummaged through a box in a basement and come across an old letter? It transports you straight to another place in time. It causes great pause. Your heart warms at the sight of the handwriting, something we so rarely see from one another these days. So rare, in fact, that it is like seeing a secret language that has its own voice. the voice of a friend, the voice of someone who isn't there anymore. A phone call is nice, but when I was off and away on my many travels in life and I didn't have a letter, I didn't have a hug, I had a letter. I once had a pen pal for 21 years. She passed away peacefully on Monday, February 12th, 2018, at the age of 92. She was my grandmother. A couple of days later, it was Valentine's Day, and I posted to my Instagram on the morning of 12 February. I lost my favorite pen pal of 20 straight years, my paternal grandmother. I began writing to her when I moved to Savannah, Georgia for college, and continued to do so up until recently. In her honor, I chose Valentine's Day to pen some letters to a couple of my favorite people and sent them off. Those who know me best know my sheer joy and love for this lost art. People reached out to me and said that they were inspired to reread old letters and even write to parents and grandparents again. But in my grief, the irony of two digital social media posts catalyzing letter writing in others' lives was sharing a glaring light on mine that it now had a big hole in it. It is one thing to inspire adults to write to other adults, people my age who at least passed paper notes in high school before getting their first cell phone well into college. But how do I reach who I call the swipe right generation that is really disconnected from this form? And younger, the children who, true story, can't grasp the concept that there is just one movie on a VHS tape and not an entire Netflix catalog. Was my idea of combating this digital world but a nostalgic and obsolete notion from a hopelessly romantic woman who grew up on the threshold of tech's advent? Well, perhaps it is. A couple of weeks after my grandmother had passed, I was sitting in an armchair, gazing out the window, and trying to come up with an idea of how to create a foundation around analog letter writing in this age of amazement, and wondering if that ship had sailed when I got a ping on my cell phone from Facebook Messenger. It was from a familiar name, and the name was familiar because I knew the sender and his wife and two young boys from having photographed various arts and cultural events in our community that they had also attended. I also knew that his wife had died suddenly and unexpectedly on the same day as my grandmother. He had seen my social media mid-month, and he was asking me if I would write to his two young boys who had just lost their mom. We are all too busy living in our digital lives, but if we all sent a letter each month, the cumulative impact would be enormous. People might start to feel valued again. People might stop feeling the need to live through Instagram. People might connect at a deeper level. It is my hope that you will write a letter in the next week. Take the time to think and express your deepest emotions. You will reacquaint yourself with the wonderful feeling of leaving a mark on paper. It'll make your day, and it'll make someone else very happy. Thank you.